Yeah. Okay. Okay. Team, good evening. Our guest tonight, Julie Clare, has asked that you put your show us your videos because she wants to see your face. Hi, David.
Yes.
Okay. David, you need to mute though. Come on, Caroline. We want to see what you look like. And Julia, and Rosalind, and Shirley. Bear in mind that this is.
I mean, you don't have to, but it would just be nice to see your faces, at least for a little bit.
Bear in mind that this is part of an audition. And
yes,
several of you could be appearing in one of Julie's West End plays any minute now. I'm not saying she goes on face rather than skill, but who knows? Who knows? Okay, it's 8:15. We are recording, I believe, because I've been asked to do that by the person who introduced us to each other. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this Zoom about how to become an angel. Just to explain a couple of things. Firstly, I've been running extremely serious Zooms for the last year and a half on cheerful topics like how to survive prison, how to survive a concentration camp, experiences in the Second World War. And I thought it was time to have something, particularly as it's summer, that's quite a lot lighter and rather strange how Julie and I have met, which is not in person, by the way, but I was on a walking tour of Chelsea Physic Garden. And if you've never done that, I strongly recommend it. It is a delightful garden. And my guide, who I had a coffee with afterwards, an alumnus of Northwest London Jewish Day School, I may say, told me all about Julie and said I should speak to Julie because she's an interesting person. So I spoke to Julie a couple of months ago, and indeed she is an interesting person. And Julie is going to talk to us about being a theatre producer, how she got into that. And I'd like to say she's a local girl made good. Now that isn't entirely true, but it's not. But it is not as untrue as you might think. So, Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and explain why you might be considered a local girl made good? Okay?
That's because for my sins, I went to North London Collegiate School.
And were you sinning before you went there or afterwards?
I think it was the influence of the school. Yeah, sent me completely off the rails. But no, I went to North London and then I had a year out and then I went to Manchester Uni and then I trained at Bristol Old Vic Theatre School as an actress.
So let's go right back because you've spent a life in the theatre. So where did you grow up if you weren't a local girl? How did that all start?
I growed up in Highgate.
Yes.
And the bug bit at the age of 4 when I was at primary school. And one of my best friends, who was the daughter of an actress, got to play the starring, as far as I'm concerned, role of Gretel in a West End production of The Sound of Music.
Whoa.
And she got time off school. She came back. She had a book of poetry signed by all the cast. And I thought, anything that gets me out of school and gets me on the stage, this is looking good to me. And
sorry, can I check? That was at the age of 4 you thought that? You were trying to get out of school and get autographs at the age of 4.
Not autographs. I don't do autographs. My mother bought me an autograph book when I was about 9 and I gave it back to her because I said, I don't want autographs. I want to be the person giving the autographs.
Ah, right. So
hubris.
You're modest from an early age.
Hubris, total hubris.
And did you grow up in an artistic home, a home of drama?
No.
And was the drama amateur or just family dynamics?
Well, other than family dynamic drama, which is kind of standard. No, I wouldn't say I grew up in a home of drama, but I grew up in a home of books and intellect. And my father worked in advertising and then alongside that wrote a couple of books that were very well received, one of which was Last Waltz in Vienna, which was the rise and fall of a family. And it was about his entire family history, tracking back all to the 1700s. Whoa. And his parents who died in Auschwitz.
Okay, well, we did say this is going to be the lighter,
yes.
a lighter summer approach.
On.
Nevertheless, your dad's book, Last Waltz in Vienna, George Clare, I think. If
Yeah.
my memory serves me correctly, it did actually eventually get into visual media. Like,
No.
I can't remember. No, it wasn't. It was only a book.
No,
It wasn't
there
TV
was
or video or anything.
No, there was an arena documentary about it, and he followed it up with a book called Berlin Days, which was also very well received. And I mean, the first book, he had pull quotes from Le Carre and Beryl Bainbridge and people of that level. So, you know, I'm very proud of him.
And did it mean growing up in a arty home in Highgate that you had well-known people trotting through the lounge?
No, because we weren't an arty home at that point. We really weren't. Like I said, he worked in advertising, but it was an intellectual home. So it was a home of ideas and discussion, I would say.
Okay. And as you said, you were very keen on being an actress, even from the age of 4. It's just kind of a serious question. I see that most of the people on are grandparents. Were you acting at the age of 4 in some way in your own home?
No. Oh, I would. Yes. Well, yes, actually. I would put on little variety shows with my friends. We would make up songs and we would do things like that. And we would dance around the living room and force our parents to watch it. But then I think most children do that.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of me being a performer, well, I know the idea of me being a performer was my father's nightmare. He would far rather I'd been a lawyer. But every lawyer I've met since then has invariably turned around to me and said, oh, I secretly want to be an actor. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, there are certain things that they have in common, like making up a whole load of old rubbish and telling lies and stuff, particularly the criminal lawyers. I hasten to add, for those who are online and are married to lawyers. But okay, so you grew up in Highgate, as it were. How come you ended up at North London Collegiate? You could have gone to South Hampstead or something like that. What happened?
The catchment area from my primary school was a local comprehensive. And my parents came to see the end of term show of work after the first term. And they looked at this collage that we'd made and went, well, we think she's clever, but we're her parents, we could be biased. So they sent me to the Tavistock to have my intelligence tested. And it just so happened that an English teacher lived underneath us and she worked at North London. And she said, you need to get this child into my school. Okay. And that's how it came about.
And what did they say about you at the Tabby, by the way?
They said that I was remarkably intelligent, but that my one area of deficit was much more around comprehension and common sense. And that explains why I work in the theatre.
Yeah. So you think that was a fairly accurate assessment of you?
I think it was a very accurate assessment.
That's hilarious. Hilarious. I don't know if it was my brother-in-law who tested you, but there you go. Okay. So after...
I may not hear anybody unless they're screaming, but that's fine.
Somebody is not on... Anthony isn't on mute. Alan Winthrop, you're not on mute. Can you mute yourselves, please? Right.
I mean, so, I really unlike to hear because I can have my head.
Hold on, I'm going to have to mute all. Barbara Lerner. That's my wife. Okay, it's done. Right, so you went off to university to study drama?
Mm-hmm. I've always been consistent.
Yeah. And I mean, it's such a hard living to get into.
Yeah.
I had friends from uni who became actors, and it was like, if you were lucky, you got an advert. If you were lucky, you got a bit part in a rep in some ghastly, awful town. But you went on to the Bristol Old Vic, which is a pretty prestigious place to be. Tell us about your time there and your training as an actress.
I left Manchester at the end of 2 years of a drama degree because I got into Bristol. And the minute I phoned my father and went, I've got into Bristol, he knew it was done. It was done. And bless him, he completely supported me, even though he didn't want me to do it, but he still supported me. I would say the minute I walked into the doors of Bristol Old Vic was the first time I felt like I was at home. I'd done well at school, but I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. And I'd learned how to learn at university, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't fit in. But when I walked through the doors of Bristol Old Vic, I was home. And the training was extraordinary. I mean, I'd done 22 plays in my first year at Manchester already, so I was just going for it with great guns.
Whoa.
And it was just everything that I wanted to do and everywhere I wanted to be.
Was it a rounded training about the theatre, or was it you were on the drama track and there were others who were on stage settings and others on makeup? How did that work?
One of the things I really loved about Bristol, and it's one of the things that in the industry is kind of known, is that at the time there weren't many drama schools that made you do a stage management rotation. So everyone from stage management had to do a performing rotation, and everyone who was on the performing course had to do a stage management rotation. And what that means is that you treat people with respect, because you have some understanding of what their job entails. And I've seen a lot of people treat stage management with disrespect, and I will not allow it.
Presumably also, I mean, apart from the respect issue, which is pretty important, it's you would understand as a stage manager what are the issues for an actor or an actress in being able to be successful, and vice versa, about what is actually practically possible when you're setting up a play.
Yes, exactly that.
So did you get into theatres whilst you were at Bristol Old Vic, or you did the student stuff at the Bristol Old Vic and then had to go out and try and get jobs? How did it work?
The student stuff was at Manchester. Bristol Old Vic, I was the lucky one who got the one equity card at Westcliff-on-Sea. That was my big break. That was my first job. Westcliff-on-Sea. Daisy pulls it off. And at that time, Margaret Thatcher hadn't yet broken the unions, so equity was still a closed shop. You had to get a job at a theatre that had an equity card to give away. So I was very lucky to get the Westcliff card.
Oh, sorry. So did theatres have I'm sure this is a serious question, I've got no idea what the answer is going to be. Did theatres have an allocation of equity cards?
They used to, yes. So they could hire people coming out of drama school. And that was one of the ways to get your equity card. I don't know how I would have done it otherwise, because it was really, really hard to do in those days, because I am really, really old.
So did that mean, you don't look it, of course, and I'm supposed to say that anyway.
You are.
But did that mean you had to actually perform at Westcliff? That's where your career had to start?
Yes.
And this was on the beach, on the promenade? Where was it?
No. The theatre at Westcliff-on-Sea. There is a theatre.
I've got to be very cautious because somebody who's on is from Southend. What was the theatre of Westcliff?
I think it's the Palace Theatre Westcliff. I think I'm right on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it was a long time ago. Yeah. And in fact, they wanted to hire me to do the next show, but I knew that Ipswich were going to do Fiddler on the Roof. And more than anything else, I wanted to play Hoddle. And so I let go of the Westcliff job in the hope that I could persuade Ipswich to see me, not even to give me the part, just to see me. So I remember writing in calligraphy a letter to the director, which literally just went, young, Jewish, fabulous voice, and a lot of chutzpah. And I dropped it off at the theatre and I got an audition. And I went in and he picked up, and it had gotten torn, and he just picked up this piece of paper like this and went, young, yes. Jewish, yes. A fabulous voice, well, we'll see, won't we? And a lot of chutzpah, well, I don't even know what that is. And I thought, and you're directing Fiddler, and you don't know what chutzpah is, and you can't even pronounce it. So then I had to do the audition, and I sang, and this is very self-aggrandizing, but he basically kind of sat up and went, oh, you really do have a fabulous voice. And then he said, can you dance? And I went, it's not my strongest point. And he said, because I've already cast Hoddle, so the only part left for you would be Carver. And I said, I don't think I'd be a good Carver for you. So I never got it, but I got other things.
But sorry, to clarify, had you by this point given up your Westcliff equity card?
Not the card, just the second job.
Oh, I see. And Anthony here from Southend has clarified that there are two theatres in Southend Westcliff now, the Palace Theatre and Cliffs Pavilion.
No, it was the Palace, because I've played the Cliffs with a different show, but it was the Palace.
Okay, Cliff is the name of where it was located, Anthony, or there was somebody called Cliff.
It's called the Cliffs.
We're at the pavilion. Okay, it's called
Yes,
the Cliff.
On the cliffs, yes.
Yes, okay. That was a little bit tongue in cheek. So what was your first part then as in professional theatre?
It was in Daisy Pulls It Off at Westcliff-on-Sea at
You
the
had no
Palace
choice.
Theatre.
You had to go back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I played one of the schoolgirls and I played Daisy's mother.
Just to help for those of us who are older than you, which is most of the people on, I've never heard of Daisy Pulls It Off. What was that?
Oh, it's like a kind of St. Trinian story brought to the stage, or one of the old Angela Brazil schoolgirl stories.
Yeah. Okay. And was this like part of a run going around the country, or this was what they were
Just
going
at
to do in
that
Westcliff?
theatre. Just at that
Okay.
theatre.
And how long? And were you commuting to Westcliff, or you had to live there?
No. I was staying there in Diggs.
Oh my lord, the actress in Diggs. It's like
Yes.
almost a stereotype, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how long were you in Westcliff for?
Oh, I was only there for about 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Because you've got this equity card attached to.
Well, then I could audition for other things. So I think a whole variety of jobs, quite a few in musicals, even though I was desperate to be a classical Shakespearean actress, but you know, the voice is the voice. So I did Brighton Beach Memoirs at Coventry. I did a chamber opera of the Diary of Anne Frank called Yours Anne.
That sounds a little tasteless, was it?
Well, no, it wasn't tasteless at all, actually. It was beautiful. It was beautifully done, because we lived in fear of someone in the audience shouting out, "She's in the attic," which is apparently what happened on Broadway.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, so you don't want to, and that was it's a famous theatre story about the run of the play of the Diary of Anne Frank on Broadway, where apparently it was so bad that someone shouted that out. I don't know whether that's true or apocryphal, but either way, nobody did in ours.
Well, thank heavens for that. I've got no idea whether I'm sharing my screen at the moment. Hold on.
Not at the moment.
Not on the moment. Let's go to share screen. And is this you in Brighton Beach Memoirs?
That is me in Brighton Beach Memoirs.
Yes, and he was a remarkable playwright, Neil Simon, wasn't he?
I love Neil Simon.
And he did, yeah. And he was just did so many wonderful plays in the years gone by. So were you kind of like any actress in the early part of their career, going from one regional rep to another?
Yeah, or touring. I did a 6-month tour of a musical called In the Midnight Hour, which was all about the northern soul scene in the early 1960s. And I played the lead girl. It was kind of a Beatrice Benedict style love story, but set in the clubs of Liverpool.
So In the Midnight Hour, that was a hit by Wilson Pickett, if I remember.
It was indeed, and the whole show was filled with classic soul songs.
Okay, so although Wilson Pickett was a wonderful black singer from America, it was a scene set in the north of England.
Yeah, because Northern Soul was a massive movement. There were major fans, I mean, including the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, were listening to all of this music that was coming. It was based in blues, but coming out of America and coming out of Motown.
Okay, so whilst, did you at some point manage to break into the West End?
I did. I did a show in Liverpool called Good Rocking Tonight, which was a jukebox musical about the life of Jack Good. And I played opposite, I don't know if any of you watched The Crown, I'm not sure who he plays in it, but Greg Wise, who is also Mr. Emma Thompson, in his first theatre role, played my husband.
Okay, and so that was in Liverpool. How does that get you to
And
the
then
West
it
End?
transferred to the West End.
And where in the West End were you?
We started at what was then called the Aldwych Theatre, and then we moved to the Playhouse, which is the one just
Piccadilly?
down across. No, the Playhouse.
Oh yes, just
It's
back
on
down
the
that
south.
kind of yeah.
And which is known in the business as the play shows go to die, but it was also the only theatre that was available at the time. And that's not true of every show, but it does have a bit of a history. And then they moved us into the Prince Charles, where Book of Mormon is now playing, just by Leicester Square.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we ran for over a year.
Wow, that is a long run.
Yeah.
And it must have been very remunerative. Did you ever earn more than 10 quid a week?
No, it was a Ken Wright show. I had a friend who did a show with that producer, and it was The Rose Tattoo by Tennessee Williams, and she had to take over from Julie Walters. And even when she took over from Julie Walters, she was still getting paid less than the company goat. There was a goat in the show that was being paid more than her.
Well, presumably the goat was harder to train.
Yeah, I don't know. You haven't met her. She's a very difficult woman.
Who, the goat?
No,
You.
my friend.
Your friend. Okay, so there was a deliberate attempt to pay her less than a goat would earn.
No, there was a goat in the show.
I believe you.
That got paid. There was my friend in the show playing the lead role, taking over from Julie Walters, and she was still being paid less than the goat.
Was the goat a big eater? Was that the problem?
I don't think so. I think it was quite an anorexic goat.
Oh, heaven knows what it did with all its savings then. That's amazing.
It lived very well for the rest of its days, I would imagine.
Well, I suppose at least it avoided having its throat slit. So that was a start. So once you got to the West End, did you kind of move back to London?
Oh, I was in London the whole time. You live in London, or you did in those days. You kind of almost had to be in London. It's different now. You've got big broadcasting hubs up north, and also in Scotland and also in Wales. So you don't necessarily have to be in London anymore. But for my generation, you had to be. So you would leave London and go and do the job and come back and then temp, or do whatever it was that you did in between jobs. And then you would get a tour and you'd go from town to town to town for 6 months. And then you'd come back to London at the weekends if you could. So that's just the life. And I hit a point, I would say, after that West End run, where I got offered a job by lovely Julia Mackenzie at Scarborough, in a Stars and Drew musical. And I just thought, I can't do it anymore. I can't. I've got a mortgage. I barely ever sleep in my own home, and I'm really tired of this. And so I made a shift more to writing, and I'd been doing in between jobs. I'd been working for, as an events organizer, I'd been doing PR, literary PR. I've been doing marketing, and I got a job with a global consultancy that I could do kind of from home. So it fitted around. So I focused more on writing and that for a period of about 7 years.
Okay, so lots of people, young people say, what I want in my life is to be a writer. So I understand that you wrote. Did you ever get published?
No, I didn't write books. I wrote screenplays.
Okay, did your screenplays ever get bought?
My screenplays absolutely got bought. They just never got made. The first, it's a term called development hell that they talk about in television and film. Someone buys it and then they work with you on it, but can they get the financing? Will that ever happen? So we'd done a read through. I'd written a full-length film, a feature, and it was terrible. It was terrible. But I asked for advice from 3 people in the business that I trusted, and they all said, put it in your bottom drawer for 6 months and then go at it with a really good script editor. And in fact, the same friend who got paid less than the company goat started going out with a script editor, a reader for Film 4, almost 6 months to the day. And he became my script editor, and he taught me, he was the first person to teach me to write. So we did a reading of that with Caroline Quentin and Lenny James, who you may know from Line of Duty. Ooh. And that got bought by Initial Films, but just languished then in development hell. And then she and I got asked by Caroline Quentin if we would write something for her production company, for her, a vehicle for her. And Channel 4 commissioned that, and we did. They said, the irony of this story is going to become very clear very soon. They said, we'd really like you to improvise with actors and workshop it and, just feel really free about it. And I thought, I'm not doing that. I'm not trusting this to improvisation. I'm finishing this script. We're learning this script. We're staging this script, because I don't trust your imaginations. And thank God we did on one level, because they bought it straight after. And then Caroline got pregnant. And that was the end of that. Just as another sideline.
So when you're doing this writing and they're saying they bought it, they actually paid you, and then they did nothing, and they did nothing with it.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
God, that must be quite frustrating.
It really is. But the irony, there are kind of two ironies to that. One is that I was pooh-poohing improvisation.
Yes,
And
we'll
yes,
come
I
to
ended
that.
up, yeah.
We'll
So
come
we'll
to
get to
that.
that with Showstopper. But the other thing was that Caroline got pregnant. 2 years ago, I was asked to go and speak to a drama school class, a graduating class, about what it is to be a producer and what they needed to know about how to work with producers. And I told that story in the class. And this girl literally pulled her jumper over her head and the whole class started to laugh. It was Caroline's daughter, Rosie.
Oh,
My timing is superb.
excellent, excellent. So were you still acting at this time as well as doing writing and temping and this and that?
The writing and the global consultancy kind of took over.
Mm.
And I had to pay, I had a mortgage to pay, you know, it was really down to that. And then as the projects kind of didn't take off, I kind of realized, I hit a point where I thought, I don't think I'm dedicated enough to this craft, but I need to kind of get back into a creative space. And probably about a week later, I went to see a show at the King's Head in London called Showstopper, the Improvised Musical, because I had some friends who were involved in it. And they said, you really need to come, they need people. And I said, I don't really perform anymore. And they said, no, they really need people. And although he will deny it to this day, Dylan Emery got down on his knees and begged me to come and audition. And I went and auditioned, and I thought, actually, to learn to improvise puts you back in a creative headspace. I auditioned, I did a workshop with them, and they said, will you join the company? And they literally only just started. They were doing their first Edinburgh run that summer. So I went up to see it in Edinburgh. They were working with, in fact, I saw a show that they did with Ken Campbell in it, the late, great Ken Campbell. And I thought, this is really interesting. This is really interesting and really scary, because it's a completely improvised musical from audience suggestions. So if any of you used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, but it's long form. Whose Line is short form games, sketches.
Yeah.
This is a full length piece of theatre dictated by audience suggestions.
We'll come to that, because it,
We will.
but could I just clarify two things, and then we'll talk about you becoming a theatre producer. Number one, the King's Head, isn't that some like a pub theatre thing in
Pub theatre in
Islington?
Islington, yeah.
So you can sit at the seats about 60, 80, 100 or even less.
Less. It's about, it was then about 70 or 80.
Wow. And it was doing Showstopper. I have to admit, I mean, I've been to Showstoppers. I'm going to recommend to everybody going to see it. It's a fabulous, fabulous show. But I thought it was like 2 or 3 years old. This is like a bit longer than that.
2008, the
Okay,
first Edinburgh Festival.
Okay.
We started in a porter cabin of 50 seats.
Yeah.
Within a week, there were lines around the block. They moved us to a 200-seater theatre.
Yeah.
And now here we are, 13 years later. I'm trying not to factor in that the last 2 years have been hell. Let's ignore that. So let's say technically 11 years later, and we now play the Pleasance Grand, which is the second biggest venue in Edinburgh, and we sell it out.
Right, up in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I saw it in Victoria.
Yes, you put it what used to be the St. James's and then became the other palace.
It's a huge theatre, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Memories. So you became a producer. Now, it took me a while to work out there's a difference between being a producer and a director. In case anybody in the watching is as simple-minded as me, just clarify the difference between a director and a producer.
The director does what the producer tells them.
Yeah.
No, I'm being really facetious, because that's not how to make it work at all. But the director is the person who takes the thing off the page and holds the vision together that they hold with the producer, but holds that vision for the entire creative team. So it's about, how do you take something off the page and make it three-dimensional, make it live in 3D in front of people in that moment. That's the director's job. The producer's job, how long have you got?
Well,
I'll
You've
try
got
and do it
about
shortly.
29 minutes left. Okay.
The producer's job is to find the material in the first place, whether that's a revival, whether that's new work, whatever it might be that they're passionate about. They find the writers, or they option the script. They put the entire creative team together. So the director, the lighting designer, the sound designer, the choreographer, the videographer, the fight director, you name it. They create the vision in collaboration with the director. They're involved in the casting. They raise the money. They oversee the sales and ticketing of the show. They oversee the marketing and the PR strategy. They keep everybody calm when they're flying off the handle, and believe me, they fly off the handle. The producer does pretty much everything down to making sure that the copy in the programs is accurate.
Well, I know we pre-chatted. I wasn't expecting anything like that for an answer. I thought it was a lot simpler than that, and I thought it was just about finance. So that's an extraordinary range of.
You write the budget, you run the cash flow, you make sure that you do all the contracting. I mean, it is a massive, massive job, which is why when people can, they have teams to help them do it.
Of course. So you went into production and you went in straight ahead. I'm going to be a producer and I'm going to put on a show.
No, nothing like that.
What happened?
I got into Showstopper as a performer, and I hadn't performed in quite some time. And I mean, I performed with them for about 10 years. But during that time, I had an idea for a show, because a friend of mine had kept saying to me, "You're improvising musicals. You should write a musical. You should write a musical." And I went, "No, I'm not a good enough writer," because I kind of knew that I wasn't dedicated enough to that side of it. But having written, what that gave me was an understanding of form, style, structure, theme, everything to do with how you build a show in terms of the storytelling. And that was a huge advantage. And I had an idea for, if we improvise musicals every night, but then we throw them away and we improvise another one and another one, but could you use the same tools to actually create a musical in a space that you could then refine? So that was the first thing that made me kind of go, "Oh, I wonder if I could do this." And our general manager at the time, I talked to him about it, and he said, "Well, you should go and do the Stage 1 course." Now, Stage 1 is an arm of the Society of London Theatres, and it exists to help emerging producers. And I was emerging generally in people's minds means young, and I was not young at this point. So I thought, yeah, okay, great. But I did the course, and it was a bit like I'd felt at Bristol. I thought, oh my God, I've come home. Mm-hmm. And it was as if everything I'd been doing in the intervening years, I had the performance, I understood how writers think. That's a huge generalization, but I have an insight to how writers work. But I'd also been doing business development, marketing, sales, PR, all of that stuff. So it all kind of felt like it just came together. Mm-hmm. So I got Arts Council money to develop that show. And then I got asked by a friend who had done a show up in Edinburgh if I would take that show to London. And that was the first thing I produced. That was at Trafalgar Studios in the West End in 2014.
And what was that called?
It was called Miss Havisham's Expectations, with the extraordinary Linda Marlowe, who used to be Berkoff's muse back in the days of Decadence and East and all of those plays. And she is a tour de force. And it was a show basically about Miss Havisham. And we did it over Christmas as part of a Dickens double with another show called Sykes and Nancy. And we actually broke even, which was
unheard of.
Yeah, pretty much for a first show. I think it may have set up false expectations, but yeah, I learned another really important lesson on that show, which is don't try and save money by not hiring a production manager, because you need a production manager. That person oversees everything technical related to the production. And I ended up doing myself, but we don't have enough time to go into that story.
I mean, the Trafalgar, that's down Whitehall, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
On the right-hand side, if you're coming from Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
It's not a huge auditorium, as I remember.
No, we were in the smaller space. We were in the studio space, which was all I could afford at that point.
So
But they took the show, which was really interesting to me.
So to break even, you were paying all your actors and actresses less than the Goat got again.
Less than the what? No,
No,
I don't do that. Don't do that. No.
Really?
No, and also there was only one actress, so it was a fairly cheap show to put up. I'm no fool. Yeah, but that was the first one.
And were you investing your own money in this?
No, I raised money for it.
So,
but by that time, I had done the stage 1 course, so I'd met other producers, and I'd also noticed on my course there were a few people on that course who all the top brass that were there were making a very big fuss of, and I thought, oh, I wonder who they are. So I clocked the names, I Googled, I went, aha, they were already big theatre investors, and they were coming to see what the producing side was all about.
Oh, how interesting.
So they were honoured guests. So we actually are friends to this day, but we became firm friends.
With some of these affluent people who are theatre investors.
Yeah.
Wow. Smart move. So, at which point did you manage to get from the Trafalgar, which is like, I suppose, one up from the King's Head in terms of size, into something bigger?
We knew we had been trying to find a deal for Showstopper to go into the West End for some time. And they knew I was switching over to the producing side. And when they finally got a theatre, the producer came to me, and he was the one who'd recommended that I did the stage 1 course in the first place. And he came to me and said, look, if you can raise X amount, I can get some funding because you're an emerging producer that will go on top of that. Do you want to be a co-producer in the West End? And I went, yeah. How much exactly was it you were hoping I would raise? And he told me a figure, and I said, in how much time? And he went, could you get it done in 2 weeks? And I went, okay.
So this was 50 quid, yeah?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
I thought that was the number.
But I raised the money, but ironically,
was it six figures? Seriously, was it 6 figures or what?
No, it was 5 figures.
Okay.
It was 5 figures.
So, but the company themselves had got a theatre.
They got a theatre, but you have to think about how much a West End theatre rental is. You can start at 70 grand a week and work your way up.
Okay, so when you say they got a theatre, there was a theatre prepared to take them.
Exactly.
This company, provided they forked over the rent.
Yeah, which is part of the entire budget for capitalising the show. Yeah. So what I'd said to James was, I basically said, yes, I will come on board as a co-producer. Yes, I will find a way to raise this money. But my only stipulation is that I get to sit in every single marketing meeting. I don't need to say anything. I just want to sit there. And he said yes. But at the same time, I had seen a show called In the Heights at Southwark Playhouse. And I had been talking to a writer about creating a salsa musical because I love salsa dancing. And I thought there's something here. And I went to see the show and I went, oh my God, someone's got there ahead of me and it's brilliant. And that was a show by Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame. If you haven't seen Hamilton, go see Hamilton. If you don't want to leave the house, watch it on Disney Plus. It's so good. But In the Heights, I fell in love with. And I had no big West End credits at that point. I'd just done one thing at Trafalgar Studios. But I found out who the producer was and I found out who his agent was. And I phoned them up and I said, look, I am nobody. I can raise a certain amount of money, potentially. I would really like to help this show get into the West End. And within 2 days, I was having a sausage sandwich outside the Greenwich Theatre with the producer. And I made sure to stay in touch with him every month. I just drop him a little line. And then about 2 weeks before rehearsal started, he said, could you raise X amount of money? We're this much short, and then you can have an associate producer credit. Yeah, go on, David, play it. This is my beloved.
Just where is the Heights?
Washington Heights in New York City.
It is Washington Heights, okay.
It is Washington Heights.
I just wanted to check. I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but it's where my son went to university. So I just wanted to check. Okay, let's have a go.
I got this little punk, I gotta chase the wave. Pop the grate, hit the crack of dawn. Sing while I wipe down my on and Hey, y'all, good morning.
I flip the lights and start my day. There are flights and endless debts and bills to pay.
Clare stage lights. We're taking a flight. We're going the days in the life of what it's like.
In Washington Heights,
Oh, we saw the winner yesterday. 96,000.
I win the
Down the highway of life with no regrets.
where
And no breaking the end for respect or a paycheck. Pay off the debts we owe.
I guess you could say I left school. Oh my
What?
God. What will my parents say? Not going down and fireworks fly. Like the night sky.
How do you say kiss me?
And
And how do you say hold me?
Una cucaracha, one of the bees.
Whoa. Oh, hold on, how do I get back? Stop the share. All right, I was so busy watching that I kind of lost track. You did produce that, you didn't produce that. Somebody got ahead of you. What
No, no,
happened?
no. I associate produced that show.
And
And I had my name on it. I met Lin-Manuel a couple of times. I made a rule for myself that I'm not allowed to talk to him for more than 5 minutes because I turn into a fangirl, and he's young enough to be my son if I was a very young mother, and ridiculously talented. And it's really emotional watching that, actually. I loved that show so much. And it went up, and Showstopper went up within weeks of each other. And then the Olivier Awards came around, and In the Heights won 3, and Showstopper won Best Family Entertainment. And I could not believe it was happening. I just couldn't believe it.
you were producing 2 shows at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into your personal finances significantly, which might or might not be true, but did you have like your house? Do you have to put your own house on the line, as it were?
No.
Or you're putting everybody
the
else's,
rule in
everybody else's
theatre-
money on the line. Yes.
The rule in theatre is you put everybody else's money on the line. I have put my money on the line in the past, but the rule is you don't. You don't do it because you're running it like a business, and you have a duty of care to your investors that I take incredibly seriously, because you're not playing with your own money, you're playing with other people's money. So you do everything you can to make it the best possible piece of theatre it can be. But I'm delighted to say that I am still very proud of those 2 shows.
So just talk us through this. This was not intended as an advert for you for an opportunity to raise more money from the billionaires of Belmont, but glad she's laughing. That means I've got a couple of you covered nicely. Talk us through what it means, what actually is involved in investing in a show, whether it's possible for humble folks such as ourselves to do that, what happens to the money, etc., etc.
Okay, so first of all, let me say one thing. The thing I say to every investor or potential investor is, if you cannot afford to lose the money, do not invest it in a show. Just don't do it.
Right.
Don't. I have a model that I have followed since I started, and that model is I do shows that I am passionate about, and I have the relationships now that mean that I can invest in certain West End shows that I think have a really good chance of making money. So one kind of offsets the other. My shows are a bit riskier. The West End shows tend to be less risky. There'll be star casting there, or there'll be a recognizable title, or there'll be something that's kind of giving it a boost. And so my track record is very much about my ability to pick. I'm not going to say that we've never lost money, but overall we've done really well. in terms of the shows we've chosen to invest in. So let me just say that first. So Cyrano, 136% return and rising. Fleabag, 215% and rising. Pinter at the Pinter, we lost money on, we made 35% back, so that's a 65% loss. But if we hadn't done Pinter at the Pinter, we would never have been allowed to invest in Betrayal. Betrayal is nearly a 300% profit, because when you've got Tom Hiddleston, you've got Tom Hiddleston. And Abigail's Party did 40%, but the same production company did Strangers on a Train, which did 107%. So my track record in picking is pretty good. How I run it, and this is how I do it, I can't speak for anybody else, is when you invest in a West End show, they generally ask for a minimum of a £10,000 investment per person. They will go down to units of 5,000. I like to let people in on the journey. So what I will do is I will say, if you've got 200 quid or 500 quid and you fancy a flutter in the theatre world, I will aggregate. So I aggregate investment from smaller investors so that I can get a unit in a West End show. And that's how I do it.
So, firstly, you must have a very complex cash flow in terms of investors keeping a track of stuff.
Yeah,
and their
but
bank
I said
details and getting it back to them.
all of that is done. The contracts are really clear. Everything is audited. All the show accounts come through to me and get passed to the investors, so you can see where the money's gone. That's how I run it. And yes, everybody gets regular investor statements from me, so they know where they are when the return is going to come in. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make back your investment, and then the question is, will there be profit after that?
Yeah.
But I'm still paying out profits, so I'm still getting little bits from Fleabag. I'm still getting little bits from Cyrano. We don't know what's going to happen. That was slated to go to Broadway just when the pandemic hit. So the hope is that we can get James McAvoy back, but that was going to be one of a run of 3 shows from the Jamie Lloyd company. It was going to be Cyrano, then it was going to be Doll's House with Emilia, I cannot remember her surname, but gorgeous actress from Game of Thrones. And then the last one is going to be The Seagull with Jessica Chastain is coming over from Hollywood to do it. And because I invested in the first one, I have the right to invest in the other 2.
Okay. Now, we've talked a lot about showstoppers. Let me see if I can actually
My beloved showstoppers. We are a very loving, dysfunctional family.
Okay, let's see if I can get this clip up. Hold on, I know what's going to happen. Yeah, well, I don't entirely, but that's
You're going to copy and paste it into your browser, aren't you, David?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, but I'm struggling to. It says control and click here, but it's not allowing me to do that. Hold on. This is irritating.
Open link in that menu. If you click on it again and that menu comes up, just click on the link. Right, can you see open link? There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Hopefully. You might have to make it bigger if we can get to it.
Skip ad. Right, here we go. My screen sharing is paused. Is it on?
No.
No, not at the minute.
Hold on. Can you hear it in the background or not?
Yes,
No?
I can.
Another 10 minutes. He's having problems clicking.
Are you listening?
Yeah, I've got to. I've only got. Oh, here we go.
Can you take it back to the start, David? David, can you take it back to the start? There we go.
Right, you watching it?
Yes.
Now.
Don't click that. No, you've clicked something else, my love. Yeah, you've gone into something completely different.
Hold on. I'm good at this, aren't I? Where's Alan Winthrop? Not in my house when I need him.
It's a call out for tech support.
Hold on. Share screen. That's you, the lost lecturers. Let's go into here.
Lost Lecturers is not us.
Hold on. is this again. There we go. And play. No, damn. Sorry.
You can do this, David. I have faith.
You're making such a balls up.
Why?
Need some help. Needs help doing the click and stuff. Clippy.
Hold on, hold on. Ah,
Oh, for God's sake, stop it. They don't help him, please.
I'm trying to stop it.
To be fair, all you have to do is Google Showstopper the improvised musical trailer and it will come up. That's definitely not it.
Don't take your chances, there are no answers.
That is not it.
All right, stop share. We'll do that again. I know what's happening. I just don't know how to stop it from happening, which is every time I click to it, it goes on to the next thing. Let's pull that up again. There it is. There, that's a picture of it. Then we'll go to this. Copy it into the browser I'm trying to do. Open link. There it is. Now, can you see it?
No.
No.
Can you?
I have a black screen.
Your father is so terrible at this.
Oh,
Come on, David.
no, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Could you hear it?
No.
No.
But I will say that we are back.
Hold
at the
on,
game.
hold on, hold on.
Okay.
The whole thing.
It's time to get down from your high horse.
Oh, this is so.
Just let it
irritating.
keep going. Just let it keep going. It's fine.
Could you hear it?
Yes.
I don't know why it says you're screen sharing.
Just
on here.
press play.
It's time to get down from.
This seems so polished. I can't believe they just made it up in front of our eyes.
It's time to get down from your high horse.
It's a very scary thing to watch and then tremendously exhilarating when it works, and it always works.
And now
The way they can make music out of everything is phenomenal.
we found the Wizard of Oslo. We have.
If anybody hasn't seen this show, come. It is just brilliant. I've seen it so many times and it's never been anything but genius, and I'm coming again.
Right, you could hear it, could you?
Yes.
Right, why don't you explain to people what it's all about?
It is
What actually
exactly what
happened?
it's exactly what it says on the tin. It is a fully improvised musical. The story, the words, the lyrics, the music, it is all improvised. The conceit is that you have a writer at the beginning of the show who is asked to write a musical in the next hour and a half, and he's run out of ideas and he asks the audience for suggestions, and then we create a musical in the moment from those suggestions. And to assure people that it is completely improvised, we will stop, the writer will stop the action at various points and go back to the audience for more suggestions, so that you know, because we've had so many conspiracy theories. In fact, I
wanna
think in
deal
the,
with- no, I want to deal with that, right?
Oh.
Because I've seen the show,
yep,
and somebody, the writer stands up, or the producer, somebody stands up and says, "Give me an idea for a show." And having seen the polished performance from beginning to end, I join the conspiracy theorists. There is no way you're not picking out people in the audience. Oh, it's unbelievable. People literally call out answers, and the main person says, "Okay, we're going to do a show about blobbity blob." Do do your people have kind of some themes in their head beforehand?
No, won't work if you do that. We tried, doesn't work.
Okay. And then you'll say, well, what's going to happen to them? What's happening to this one? What I found stunning was that there's no ums and ahs and ers. If I listen to the news on Radio 4 in the morning, which I do, and I've got nothing better to do with my time, you ask a politician to talk about the most important things to them. Firstly, they repeat what the broadcaster says. Secondly, there's ums and ahs, and you know what I mean. And they sound completely inarticulate. And here you've got actors and actresses for whom the usual preparation is learning your lines. And there is no hesitation. In fact, I go further, just a minute, no hesitation, no deviation, no repetition.
No, there is repetition.
There is a lot of repetition.
You have to reincorporate. That's really important.
In the choruses, that's true. But it must be very special actors and actresses to be able to do something like that.
We worked on this for years. And when they started, I was one of the first people to join after the initial kind of core team. But I know that when they started, they did try to find ways around things. And they very quickly realized it wouldn't work. You have to just be that good an improviser. And we rehearse every week. And when I say that, people misunderstand because they think, oh, you said rehearse, so you are setting something up. No, when we do rehearsals, we work on, in terms of building a story, it's all about story building techniques. So it's what types of stories are there? What are the essential things that you need for certain types of stories? We worked in the early years just on how can I improvise a song that sounds like Sondheim, or that sounds like Lerner and Lowe, or that sounds like Rodgers and Hammerstein? So what are the things that make a song feel like that composer or that show? And then we got more sophisticated and we went, what makes a song sound like a song from Sweeney Todd, or from Marry Me a Little, or from Follies, because it's different. So we keep working on having a range of repertoire that is quite huge. And then when you get on stage, you let it all go and you just do what comes out of your mouth, because that's the only way you can do it.
So the people playing the music have got
are
to
improvising.
They're improvising, and they've got to be in tune with the actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And normally, even more than an actor who's got the words, you normally have notes in front of you and you know where you're going to.
Yeah, but musicians think jazz. Jazz is a completely musical improvisation discipline. So there are certain musicians that is their forte. I mean, Duncan Walsh Atkins, who is our musical director, is very close to being a genius, because there's improvising music, but then there's improvising music when someone's singing and you don't know where they're going to go with it. Yeah. So that is an art in and of itself. And then we always did it originally just with a piano. Now we have a band.
I know.
So we've got percussion or improvising along with keyboards, along with reeds, sometimes with violin, sometimes with sax. I mean, it's an extraordinary beast.
Okay, we're going to sort of bring ourselves towards the end here. I believe you're trying to work on developing family shows at the park.
I am. We did Peter Pan.
Can we tell people where the park is?
Oh, Park Theatre in Finsbury Park.
Does
anybody know it?
Well, I've been there. I've seen a couple of shows there. And what's the definition of a family show?
So we do the Christmas
in the 21st,
show.
Yeah.
So it's not a Christmas show in a religious sense, but it is a Christmas show in a festive season sense. Let's put it like that, because actually a lot of the audience demographic that go to the park are Jews from North London. So I'm very keen to stay non-denominational, not North denominational. But yes, and we started with Peter Pan. And then I was co-producing, but then I took the slot over in 2020 2019, 2020. 1 second, that is my mother trying to call me, but really not now.
That's mothers.
I'm a good daughter. I'm a good daughter. She's only downstairs. But we then did the Snow Queen, which was just delightful to do. And we had hoped, obviously, before COVID hit, to do Treasure Island with a female Jim, which I'm really looking forward to. That had to be postponed last year. We've had to postpone it this year as well, because we just don't think that schools will be in a shape to bring parties of children to the theatre. So instead, and even David doesn't know this, instead, we've reduced the slot, and instead of doing 5 weeks, we're going to do a short and sweet 2 weeks from the 20th of December to the 1st of January. And it's going to be a show that I took to Off-Broadway in New York, which is probably one of the most successful shows I've produced, rather than a West End show involved with. And that show is called Julie Madly Deeply. And it is the story of Julie Andrews told through the eyes of her biggest fan. It is delightful. It has a sing-along at the end.
Oh.
Book your tickets now, because really, what more could you want? And then the other thing that we're going to do, we hope, and by the way, this is not public knowledge, the announcement won't happen until the end of August. So, you know, keep it stum.
So I shouldn't put it in the Shaw newsletter then.
Please don't. Not until the appropriate time when I give you the go ahead. But we're going to put some late night comedy over the top of it. So we're going to do some late nights on Fridays, not good for you guys. And Thursdays, much better, which is my Yes Queens, which is the West End's first female-led improvised comedy group. And we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's got a lot of people from Showstopper, from Ostentatious, from Mischief Theatre, The Play That Goes Wrong, because these are all improvisation-led shows. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
And tickets are bookable now?
Tickets will be bookable in September, so I will give you the nod.
Excellent. And if somebody invests in your show, a couple of £100, do they get any side benefits?
Okay, so I'm not going to lie to you. It does depend on the amount of money, and it also depends on the amount of investors. If I've got 20 investors, that's much harder than if I've got 5. But generally speaking, yes, there are perks. So there are things like being able to come and see an open dress rehearsal, for example.
A lady called Julie
being
Clare,
able to
who's
have
a
Hello.
actress, singer.
What's going on there?
I'm getting a good PR is what's happening there.
Okay.
Things like being able to meet the cast after the show, or having backstage tours, signed programs, all of those kinds of things. And obviously being at the first night.
Whoa. Okay. Julie Clare, you've been extraordinarily generous with your time.
It's my pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun. And I'm certainly, well, I've got tickets before I even knew that I was going to be interviewing you. I've got tickets for Showstopper on August the 9th. So make sure it's a good night, please.
What, at the Garrick?
Wherever it's on, I don't know where it is. I bought
in the West End?
Yeah.
Come on down. Well, let's have a party.
Excellent. And I'd also get into the park. It's a great little theatre, folks. Parking's about okay. It's not brilliant around there. You just about do it.
It is after a certain time. After a certain time, and before the show goes up, parking is good.
Okay. Julie, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Really a pleasure listening to you. And the second conversation I've had with you, please go have some more before we finish. Take every opportunity of wishing everybody a good evening. It's Thursday night, so good Shabbos for tomorrow. Everybody.
David,
yes,
can
Julie.
I just say huge thanks to you, and thank you to everybody who showed up. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you,
Julie. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thoroughly
Thank you.
terrific.
Bye.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A standing ovation, Julie. A standing
Thank you very
ovation.
much.
Be
Take
well.
care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.